The following short story by Anna Cora Mowatt Ritchie was published in the New York Ledger, May 18, 1867. Marie Antoinette's Necklace by Anna Cora Ritchie. 7 rows of seed pearls, united at intervals by red gleaming carbuncles. This was the necklace, and its history is passing strange. That necklace encircled the slender throat of the beautiful maiden called Marie Antoinette. Upon the day when her mother, Maria Theresa, jubilant with high hopes, entered the young girl's chamber and poured in her ears the welcome news that the Dauphin of France sought her as a bride. Music was Marie Antoinette's passion, and for many years before her marriage, she had been the pupil of the great composer Gluck. She not only entertained the most profound admiration for his genius, but was warmly attached to the singular, simple-minded, gifted maestro. Gluck was painfully nervous, sensitive, self-deprecating, a man whose pleasant name seemed to have been given to him in mockery of his joylessness. He was grievously short-sighted and so excessively timid that attracting observation bewildered him, and positive fright rendered him eccentric. His royal pupil affectionately promised that he should receive her patronage after she ascended the throne. Yet when Gluck visited Paris for the express purpose of producing his opera Alceste, he could not muster courage to appear before the Queen. Through all the ordinary channels he sought in vain to win a hearing for his opera. Managers gave him the cold shoulder. Supercilious singers shook their heads. Men of lesser merit, who had gained a position, jostled him out of their way. Wearied, disheartened, utterly wretched, he knew that but one hope was left to him, and yet he could not summon resolution to make the legitimate steps which would have gained him admission into the palace. One night, as Marie Antoinette was driving with her suite out of the gate of the Tuileries to visit the opera in state, a man rushed from the throng which awaited her appearance and attempted to throw a paper into the royal carriage. The crowd uttered a cry. There was a scuffle, a rush of gendarmes, and a terrified individual was rudely captured. The Queen, sharing the general excitement, leaned forward and caught a sight of the culprit. She gave a start of amazement, waved her hand to a gentleman equerry who rode up to receive her orders, hurriedly uttered a few words, and the equerry immediately galloped towards the gendarmes, who were conveying the alarmed offender to prison. Marie Antoinette had recognized her old professor. Gluck learned to his great joy that he was not only set at liberty by Her Majesty's order, but commanded to appear at the Tuileries on the morrow. The excitable composer was so thoroughly overwhelmed by his good fortune that he had scarcely strength to obey the command. Happily, he also lacked courage to disobey. The Queen received him with exceeding graciousness. She pitied his confusion and tried to reassure him, talked of the happy bygone days at Schönbrunn, when she was his pupil, of his present prospects, his future greatness, but he never ventured to lift his eyes to her face, and the words he strove to utter broke into stammers and died hoarsely on his lips. Trembling and blushing, he involuntarily glanced first at one door, then at another, as though he could hardly resist the temptation to make his escape. The compassionate queen shortened the interview after assuring him that his Alceste should be produced in Paris, and with the utmost splendor. A couple of months later, Her Majesty occupied the royal box on the night of that opera's first performance. The success of Alceste was triumphant. Gluck was almost beside himself through ecstasy. During the long weeks of preparation, fatigue, nervous excitement, the alternations of hope and fear had shaken and exhausted his system. It is not difficult to comprehend how such a man could go mad or die through joy. When he heard his own name vociferously shouted on every side, half drowned by thundered plaudits, he was panic-stricken. He attempted to take refuge in flight, but was caught in the act of making his escape. While he was wildly pleading to be allowed to hide himself, came a summons from Her Majesty. There was no alternative, and he was led, almost perforce, to the royal box. Once more, that necklace of pearls and carbuncles twined about the queen's white throat. She had worn it in remembrance of her youth, the youth with which her old master was so closely associated. When Gluck was introduced into the box, she not only congratulated him with affectionate warmth upon the success of his opera, but naively told him how proud she felt at having been his pupil, and again reverted to the pleasant days passed at Schönbrunn. The agitated composer made no response. He breathed hard. His eyes glanced wildly from side to side. It became evident that his overwrought mind was giving way. All at once his gaze was riveted upon the necklace. He gave a long shriek, and, pointing at the gems, cried out, "Blood! Blood! Drops of blood about the queen's throat! Alas! Alas! Drops of blood! They have shed her blood!" And he eagerly stretched forth his hand to snatch at the necklace. A gentleman caught his arm, and with some difficulty he was removed from the box. Marie Antoinette was highly superstitious. She could not disguise her terror, and the shock she had received. Shuddering, with trembling fingers, she unclasped the necklace and thrust it into the hand of a duchess who stood by her side, bidding her take it away and keep it, that she, the queen, might never see it more. The unfortunate composer, it is said, never entirely recovered his reason, though he had many lucid intervals, and his insanity was harmless. The duchess, who belongs to one of the oldest and noblest families in Brittany, preserved the necklace as a precious memento. But, having recently entered her 88th year, she wrote a letter to the Empress Eugenie, relating in what manner the necklace came into her possession, adding that, as she had no direct heirs, the fittest person to possess this relic of the illustrious Marie Antoinette was the Empress herself. The letter was accompanied by a small case of green shagreen, bearing the half-effaced stamp of the arms of the Bourbons. Within lay the memorable necklace of pearls and blood-red carbuncles. But how welcome was the gift to Her Majesty of France! Is Eugenie wholly devoid of superstition? Was it with a throb of pleasure or a thrill of horror that she received the sad souvenir of her unfortunate predecessor? Will she ever fasten around her own delicate, graceful throat the band of pearls and carbuncles which so ominously encircled that of Marie Antoinette.